Hi everyone, welcome to InterviewPro. I hope you learned a lot about composite actions in the last few videos. Now you know what are composite actions, you know how to create a separate repository for composite actions, you know how to pass inputs, set outputs, and use versions. Do you know that composite actions can exist in the same repository along with workflows? If not, watch this video till the end. I am in the same repository where we created all these workflows. We know that workflows exist inside workflows folder under .github folder. To create actions, we need another folder called actions. So let me create a folder with name actions. So for workflows, it's workflows. For actions, it's actions. Simple, right? Actions slash. Let me just create a dummy file for now. Demo.txt, commit changes. I cannot create a folder directly, that's why I am adding a dummy text file here. We'll delete it later. So earlier, we created a separate repository called setup build environment for our composite action, where we have a file called action.yml in the root of this repository. And this action.yml has inputs that take Python version, Node version, and we have outputs, repository owner, default branch, CI/CD key, and then we used the keyword composite to represent that this is a composite action. And then we are performing a few steps here. So we can create the same thing in the same directory. We do not need to create a separate repository. Um, it depends on the requirements of your project, but it's not always necessary to have your actions in a separate repository. You can maintain those actions in the same repository where you have your workflows. Every composite action requires action.yml. So let's say I have 2 to 3 composite actions and I want to manage them inside the same repository. So all these three composite actions will have action.yml, but we cannot have multiple files with the same name inside a same folder, right? For the same reason, what we do is we create a directory or folder for each and every composite action. So we want a composite action called setup build environment. So let me create a folder called setup build environment inside actions folder. And this folder will have action.yml. And the content, let me just copy this from the previous repository. So the content is same. It's just that we have a folder called actions and we have another folder called setup build environment. Rest everything is the same. So let me commit these changes. So when we created this repository, we used this action inside the build Angular workflow. So we used name of the owner of the repository, name of the repository, and the version. So now we are going to use the action that we created inside the same repository. Let me edit this. So since we have this action in the same repository, we do not start with the organization name. So let me just remove this. You can start with dot slash dot GitHub slash actions slash setup build environment, and that's it. We pass the same inputs, Python version, Node.js, and let's see if it works. Commit changes. And also make sure that you have an action called checkout, because if you don't check out this code, the runner will not have access to this path. So whenever you are trying to access actions or any files inside this repository within your workflows, then make sure you have a checkout action. I'll commit the changes. I'll go to view runs. Let me cancel the previous run. This was triggered when I created the action. Now we see update build angular.yml got triggered. And inside this, if we look at the setup job, we see that the download action, it's downloading checkout action and upload action. Earlier we saw it was downloading the setup build environment action, but let me just open the previous workflow where we used setup build environment action. Um, I think this should have it. Yeah. So this is our previous action where we had a separate repository for setup build environment composite action. So it downloaded the repository first before trying to access it. But here we don't see it because it's in the same repository and we check it out in this step. And if I open setup build environment, we see that it's downloading setup Python action because we used setup Python action from GitHub Marketplace, and then we used setup node. So it downloaded and then it went to this path, GitHub Actions setup build environment, passed these inputs and ran these steps, and finally we have outputs. And these outputs are printed in the next step called outputs from action. We see the default branch and also CI/CD key, also the repository name. Let me go back to the code. Let's say you have multiple composite actions in the same repository. Let me just create a test action here. So what I'll do is I'll create another folder called test, and every composite action needs YML file, action.yml file. There is no compromise with this name. So it should be action.yml, but it should be inside a different folder. Let me just create a basic structure here, name test, and then we have, or let me copy it from here. So this is a simple action where we just print echo. So every composite action needs a shell. We have seen this. The shell is bash because I'm using Linux runner. And then I'll just simply echo test action. I'm not going to use this in any of our workflows, but I just want to show that if you have to maintain multiple composite actions inside your repository, then this is how you do it. You create a separate folder for each of your composite actions and have actions.yml inside each of these folders. So this is how you create composite actions in the same repository as that of your workflows. I hope the concept is clear. If you like the content, please like, share, and subscribe to InterviewPro. Thank you.